Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am joined by my super producer, Janet Turner. Hey Janet.
Hey Ben, how are you? And hey audience, how are you today? I guess because it's my birthday, weekend just passed, Ben is allowing me to be on the show.
No, I'm allowing you to be on the show. Allowing is such the wrong word. You are the inspiration for this whole week, Janet. We are doing why don't you tell everybody the idea?
Okay, so yes, I'm expecting everyone to please tune in and give me some support because it was an idea that I am passionate about and that I wanted to do. And Ben said, I don't know, Janet, but okay, I'm going to let you go for it. So I've been under a lot of pressure to make this work. And thanks to our first guest, Ellen Voie, I'm probably saying it incorrectly. She also helped us with some of the guests that we're going to have on Friday. Which hopefully we're putting together a cast of female truck drivers. But as a freight forwarder in the industry, I utilize a lot of truck drivers out of the van line system to pick up shipments at the port, at the airports, even domestically for our small crate and freights. So truckers have always been very important to me. I've been in the freight forwarding and transportation industry for well over 30 years, and truckers have been a big part of it. And anyway, so we're a little bit late. I didn't realize that last week, I think it was Trucker Appreciation Week or 2 weeks ago. So next year we'll have to plan it differently. But anyway, this week is going to be women in trucking, women in relocation.
Yeah, so it's a whole week devoted to women in trucking and relocation. And Janet, I got to tell you, you told me, hey, Ben, I want to do this Women in Trucking Week. And I was like, Janet, that sounds like a very specific niche. But I tell you what, Janet, you hit the ball out of the park on this one. You lined up some of the best talent to speak on this topic. You really did. I know you really put your heart and soul into this. And I know how important it is to you, which is why I wanted to have you on as well to talk about it and tee it up.
Thank you, Ben, and you've always encouraged me, and you know I've learned from you, and you've given me the courage. So thank you for doing it, and I hope we have a successful week. So come on, you all, tune in, ask questions, leave comments.
Yeah, and let's get in the comments here real quick here, and just because we have a couple that are just about you. So Amanda's saying happy birthday to you, Janet.
Oh, thank you, Amanda.
Yep. And Hosea, hello, Ben and Janet. Great topic. Women in trucking. Love it.
Good. Yep. Thanks, Hosea.
People already getting about it. Anka, happy birthday, Janet.
Thank you, Anka.
Dude, can I just tell you how LinkedIn, I feel like you were trending. Your birthday was trending on LinkedIn. Do you know how many people put up little graphics about, happy birthday, Janet? All these people did all this stuff. And I'm like, gosh, like how did that feel, Janet?
It felt wonderful. And, thanks to you once again. I mean, I just offered to help and my world has opened up. I've met so many great people. I have great friends in the industry that has grown, and it feels really great. It's almost a little bit, embarrassing. I get so much attention, but it's fun.
Well, you deserve it. You know what, Thank Janet? Rory says, hello, Janet. Ben, happy birthday, Janet. We love you from Mini Moves in Broadview, Illinois. That's so sweet. It's gonna
Thank you, Rory.
Jamie Masser, hi, Ben and Janet. Cheers from Cloudy and Cooler, Mississippi. Jennifer Anderson, happy birthday, Janet. Looking forward to the conversations this week.
Awesome.
I'm getting a little misty over here, Janet, already. All right. So before I start crying over here, we got about 15 people on LinkedIn Live right now. Go ahead and hit that like button. Send a heart to Janet and to Ellen Voie over here. We're going to bring Ellen out here in a moment. Also want to get any of your questions and comments for Ellen Voie. Ellen Voie is the president, CEO, and founder of Women in Trucking Association. I'm extremely excited to hear all about the association, what it does for women, what it does for the trucking industry. And Janet, I think without further adu, we should bring Ellen out.
Let's bring Ellen out.
All right, sounds good. All right, Ellen, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing great. Well, happy birthday, Janet. I didn't know it was your birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're not really counting them anymore, but it's all good.
It's the spirit of the holiday, yes. But Ellen, thanks for joining us. Where in the world are you, Ellen?
I'm actually in central Wisconsin. Beautiful, rainy,
Nice.
central Wisconsin.
There you go. Fantastic. And so, Ellen, people are tuning in right now, and you've got more people joining us here. Go ahead, hit that like. Go ahead and comment there as well. We're going to engage with your comments. We'd love to hear your questions. But Ellen, can you tell us a little bit about, well, first let's start. How did you get into the trucking business?
Well, you're going to get a kick out of this, Ben, but I actually in high school decided I want to be in broadcast journalism. So, trucking, broadcast journalism, same thing, right?
Well, now it is, right? Now it is, apparently.
Well, and I did go to school and I did get my radio operator's license, which you needed in those days. But so I went to work. In high school, I'd taken shop class. And Janet, in those days, girls didn't typically take industrial arts. But I learned how to weld and I learned how to draft and do woodworking and engine mechanics and stuff. So I got a job after high school at a steel fabricating plant. And I was working in the drafting department. And one day they came to me and they said, we want to move you into traffic. And I really didn't understand what traffic was, but they said, we will send you to school for traffic and transportation management. So they did. And I earned my diploma in traffic and transportation management. And I was the assistant traffic manager. And then I became the traffic manager. So, I mean, great skill to be able to read tariffs, audit freight bills, understand the industry as a whole. And so that was my start in transportation.
So you started as a traffic manager. Okay. And then go ahead.
Well, so then I was the traffic manager and then I got married. And so when I started my family, I did consulting for 18 years, licensing and permitting motor carriers in central Wisconsin. So I kept the truck legal and the driver legal. And it was a great skill to have. And to this day, my regulatory background has been very helpful. And then I'll give you the quick version. But after I had, while I was raising my kids and working as a consultant, I was married to a small fleet owner. We had 3 trucks. And so I helped run that as well. But I also got my bachelor's and my master's during that time. And then when I graduated with my master's, I was hired by an organization called Trucker Buddy, which is a pen pal organization for truck drivers who send postcards to elementary classes. So I ran that for 6 years. And then I was recruited by Schneider National. They asked me to come and work for them as manager of traffic and transportation management. I'm sorry, not traffic and transportation, recruiting and retention programs. So because I knew the family side of it, I knew the regulatory side of it. And my job at Schneider was to figure out how to attract and retain non-traditional groups. And that included returning military, Hispanics, seniors, and women. And at the time I was working on my pilot's license and I belonged to an organization for women in aviation. And it struck me that there wasn't an organization for women in the trucking industry. And so I actually started it while I was working for Schneider. They were so supportive because it was also part of my job. So here we are 13 years later, and now I'm more than full-time at Women in Trucking. Schneider's still a good part of the organization, but here we are.
And now you're full-time president of Women in Trucking Association. And let me ask you, I mean, what is the mission of the Women in Trucking Association?
So the association actually represents all women working in supply chain. Our goal is threefold. It's to encourage the employment of women in supply chain, to address obstacles that might keep women from either entering or succeeding in the industry, and third, to celebrate success, which means telling their stories. Basically, it's just to increase the ranks of women employed in transportation careers.
If I can ask, how many members do you have?
We have about 5,200 members, and that's corporate and individual, located in 10 countries. We're actually international.
Wow, that's fantastic, because we've got some international people here watching right now. We got Janaína checking in from Brazil. Happy birthday, Janet. Happy Monday, Ellen and Ben. We got Victoria checking in here from Dallas. I'm excited to watch the lineup, Janet. Of course, Victoria's blown away by Ellen's resume here. Fantastic. So you got what countries, like, give us some ideas of like where in the world some of these people are.
The coolest thing is people look at us here in the United States and say, wow, you're at about 10% female drivers. And other countries are, depending on the country, 2-3%. Canada is under 3%. Australia is a little over 2%. But anyway, so other countries will actually fly me to their conferences and have me talk to them about best practices. So we have members in Australia, I have members in Japan, I have members in Sweden, I have members, well, Canada, Mexico, of course, quite a few in Africa, believe it or not, South Africa. So it just basically, you know, hit and miss, but, and New Zealand.
That's fascinating to me. So you said, I just want to make sure I get this right. You said the U.S. is at about 10% female truck driver?
Female drivers,
okay.
Yeah.
And you said basically I mean, are we the highest in the world, would you say?
Way high.
But what do you think the true potential is here in the U.S.? Let's start there.
Well, potentially 50% of our drivers could be women or more. Because the job has changed so much, and people don't realize that it's not your grandpa's job. You know, I mean, the equipment has changed, the job has changed, the technology has made it less physically demanding. It's a much safer career. So I'd like to see, I mean, there's no reason why women can't make up half of the driving population and half the women in the boardrooms too.
There you go. Is there, can you explain a little bit more though about how the job has evolved? Because let's just go back, because I think there's a lot of people watching right now that have some exposure to trucking. Maybe they're with a relocation company and they purchase moving services, or maybe they work with a van line or a moving agent or a forwarder or whatever, and they purchase services, or they interface with organizations that have drivers. But a lot of people watching right now don't really understand probably the day-to-day of a driver. So maybe let's start there, and let's just talk a little bit about the day-to-day of a driver. If you could just paint us a picture, Ellen.
Sure. Well, actually, there's no typical job. I mean, you could be intermodal, you could be, you know, rigging, you could be household, you know, goods, movers. But let me just do it in overall general, what's different, okay?
Okay.
So when I came into the industry decades ago, the trucks were diesel engines, not very well, not very easy, no power steering, you know, didn't have a lot of today's comforts. And so over the years, the manufacturers have actually made the truck more like a car, as far as there's automated transmissions, it's electric power, everything, even the hood is hydraulics. So it's not a physically demanding job like it once was. And then the job itself has changed in a number of ways. And one is drivers aren't expected to unload as much anymore. When you see on the back of a trailer where it says drop and hook or no touch freight, that means all the driver is doing, I shouldn't say all, what the driver is doing is backing into a loading dock, dropping the trailer, or waiting for someone else to unload it and leaving again. So, and also it used to be they were long hauls. That's not the case anymore either with intermodal, putting trailers on, you know, piggybacks and things like that. Plus, distribution centers have moved nearer cities. So it's not like you're picking up parts in New York and taking them to California at all. You might be picking up parts in New Jersey and taking them to New York, you know, so there's a lot more regional and local jobs.
So a lot more like what we might say is a hub and spoke system, where they're going into regional hubs and then connecting hubs. So you're not just driving water to water, as we might say. So this is fascinating for me. And Janet, hop right in, Janet. I mean, you know, don't hold back.
I love the day-to-day. Tell us about how COVID has affected some of the drivers. Is there a difference for a female driver and a male driver being affected in some of the ways of COVID, or it doesn't matter across the board? Just curious about that.
Well, actually, that's a very good question. So COVID has made it difficult for drivers to get food, you know, because the truck stops, the sit-down dining was closed. You can't take an 18-wheeler through a drive-through. You can't even walk up to a drive-through because of the distancing rules. So suddenly drivers didn't have access to food. Restrooms are very, very important, more so they're very important, but for women, we're built differently. So you need a restroom. And a lot of states shut down their rest areas. So drivers didn't even have a place to stop. And the other thing is a lot of shippers and receivers are putting out porta potties because they don't want drivers walking into their facilities. So a lot of our drivers don't even have access to running water anymore. And so for women, usually hygiene, cleanliness is a high priority, and that's been making it very difficult. And also it's been hard for drivers to get personal protection equipment, especially at first, but they're expected to keep themselves protected, their trucks clean, and not even, walk in and don't even use someone else's pen. Bring your own pen so that you don't spread germs, and it's been challenging. So I think the personal hygiene part has been a real challenge for our female drivers as well as the male drivers, but it's been more so for women.
Does women in trucking offer some sort of support? I don't know, maybe letting them know what truck stops are open or closed, or information like that, or is that too hard to track?
It's actually, we have a Facebook page with about 11,000 mostly female drivers on there, and they share the information there. So they know, like if there's a defunded police area, or if there's protests going on in Chicago or Minneapolis, they go on there and say, stay away. Or this truck stop shut down because of COVID, don't stop there. And so our social networking is a hub of lots of activity.
That's awesome.
What have been some of the PPE requirements? I mean, I know in the household goods moving space, PPE has been a very hot issue. I mean, as you kind of pointed out before, household goods is probably one of the last types of drivers that actually is expected to get out, unload the truck, be in the home, or in the warehouse and interfacing with customers and shippers. And we've seen huge, requirements in our area. Have you seen this across the board with, and what are you seeing from a PPE, personal protective equipment standpoint?
Well, it really does depend on what you're hauling. I mean, because home delivery as well has the same issues that movers do, but it depends on what you're hauling. So a lot of times drivers actually do back into warehouses and things like that. Then they're expected to have their personal protection on. And if they touch anything, they're expected to make sure their truck is sanitized. There's another thing that, with team drivers, if a company is putting drivers to unrelated individuals in the cab of a truck together, that's been a real challenge for drivers. And even training has been curtailed because a driver doesn't want a stranger in their truck. So there's been some real challenges because of COVID-19, in addition to the facilities and the, like everything that we're all doing. But, and the other thing is, so we are told stay home, right? You can't tell someone moving to stay home. So the challenge has been drivers who don't want to go home because they're so afraid of infecting their families because they know they're out on the front lines being exposed, and drivers who can't visit relatives. And of course, we all know that you can't you don't have family reunions, and if there's weddings or funerals, they're restricted. And one of the things that a driver told me that just struck me was she can't see people smile. She goes through her day and she doesn't get to see people smile. I mean, I get to look at your faces right now and see you smile. But if you're wearing masks and you're sitting in a truck by yourself all day, and when you get out, everyone's wearing a mask, it's got to be hard.
Yeah.
I imagine the disconnectedness being on the road. I mean, I think that was something that we struggled with as an industry before COVID, right? Feeling disconnected. But I can only imagine how much that's been exacerbated now with the masks and the fact that everybody shut down and it's like stay outside. And I mean, what little human interaction folks were getting on the road has probably been cut in half or more.
Right. And one driver told me, she said, I'm a hugger and I can't hug, and so think about a driver being in their truck alone all day and not being able to see people smile and not being able to touch people. The incidence of depression has really dramatically increased.
Let me ask you about the family, because you mentioned the family before, and not want to affect the family, but let's just talk just for a minute, even pre-COVID, just the nature of the job. I'd like to understand from your perspective, what are some of the challenges for those out there who are watching that may not be familiar? what are some of the challenges that the drivers face regarding their family life?
You know, I didn't tell you this in advance, but I did my master's thesis on my master's thesis was the complex identities of women married to professional drivers. So there you go.
Wow.
So here's what's different. When your husband or wife, when your spouse, and at the time I wrote it basically that the wife is at home and the husband's on the road. But so your spouse is out on the road. Your neighbors think that your marriage is on the rocks because your spouse is gone all the time. You can't RSVP to weddings. You can't make a dental appointment because you don't know when they're coming home unless they have a fixed schedule. And you can't go out with your single friends because they're single, but you can't go out with your married friends because your spouse isn't there. So yeah, it's not an easy life. And what I found in my thesis, doing my research, was the more independent the wife at home is expected to be, the harder it is for the husband to enter back into the family, especially when there's children, because the wife is doing all the disciplining. The wife is becoming very self-sufficient and very, she knows how to shut off the water. She knows, where everything's located, how to take care of the honey-do list. And then the husband comes home and isn't sure where he fits in. So it's not easy. But my hat goes off. I was married for 20 years and I'm not. So I'm not the expert. But my hat goes off to all the spouses at home who are encouraging and supporting the driver on the road.
So now let's flip that, right? Let's reverse the roles a little bit, right? Because you wrote that thesis assuming that the woman was staying home and the man is in the truck. But now, I mean, here you are, president and CEO of Women in Trucking Association, and with 11,000 members on your Facebook page and 5,000 active members that the woman is in the truck a lot of times, right? And we're trying to increase those numbers, right? So what is that? What are the family dynamics there that you've seen that are challenging, and how do people work through that? I imagine, I mean, is it harder? Is it the same? How is it different?
Well, let me set this scenario. So in our best practices research, we found that 83% of female drivers come into the industry because of a family member or friend. So that's typically a husband, a spouse, maybe a dad or a brother. And she's about 50, her children are grown, and someone will say, hey, the kids are grown, why don't you go get your commercial driver's license and come out on the road with me? 83%. So she already knows what the job is like. Women don't leave the trucking industry because of home time. They don't. Men do. That's been found, that men leave because of home time because they aren't familiar with what it's going to be like. But for women, They do. And then after, a lot of times, once she gets her CDL, if something happens with the couple or she decides she wants to go solo, then she'll move into her own truck, which often happens as well. So that's your typical female driver. And she gets to, the women I talk to, especially when they're in their 50s, they get to go and see their grandkids and, travel around and do fun things. But it's not what you think.
Sure. Janet, you had that poll up there. I want to read that poll real quick, and I want to ask that of our audience here. So, Janet, would you like to read the audience poll?
Do you have a truck driver in your family? And if so, please share with us a story.
Yeah. So if you're watching this right now, throw that in the comments. If you know a truck driver, or if you have one in your family, I feel like everybody's got a trucker in their family, or they know somebody, right? Or a neighbor or something. Throw that in the comments, because I think that's interesting, and love to hear what your experience is. One of the best things, Janet and Ellen, I went to the Institute of Supply Chain Management conference in Houston back when we used to go to conferences in person, right? And last year, and we were at the North American Van Lines booth. There's my little North American truck right there, and a woman came up and she's like, my dad used to drive for North American Van Lines for like 30 years or something. And we just talked, and she had like all this emotion and, nostalgia around seeing the brand and the trucks. And then we gave her one of these little model trucks, and I took a picture and with her in front of the thing, and she's going to send it to her sisters and everything. And it was like, I feel like trucking is just kind of gets in your blood, and there's a culture around it. And it's just, why does it have that kind of nostalgia for people? Ellen?
There's a camaraderie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And going back, I've been in the industry many years. Going back many years ago, if a truck driver, if your car was, stalled on the side of the road, you'd hope a truck driver would stop because they have such big hearts. And I actually had that happen. I was in college and my Honda ran out of gas, believe it or not. Truck driver gave me a ride to the next truck stop, and then got on the CB and got someone to give me a ride back to my car. It was such a camaraderie. I don't think we have that much of a camaraderie anymore, but we still have that camaraderie in the trucking industry where drivers feel underappreciated, they just feel like everyone is, from the carrier to the scale, like people don't understand them. They feel
underappreciated maybe, right? Well,
right.
and that's interesting because it was Driver Appreciation Week last week, right? And so I want to get into how we can appreciate drivers, but first I want to go ahead and appreciate our viewers right now because they're leaving some comments here. Michael Quigley, what's up, Quigs? He's shouting out Ace Road Warriors. He is with Ace Relocation Systems in California. They are an Atlas agent, shouting out his drivers there. Appreciate you, Mike. Love to hear a story, Mike, about your drivers. Show some appreciation there. We'd love to hear it. Victoria McCullough has a question. Is women in trucking involved in regulatory planning and reform?
That's a great question. I like to tell people we don't lobby, we educate. So one of the things that we do is we have an image team made up of female drivers. We have an image team in the United States and one in Canada, and they give ride-alongs. And we've given all of the past few FMCSA administrators ride-alongs. We've given our senators ride-alongs, our Congress people, transportation, our state transportation person, and media. So I let the drivers tell their stories so that the legislators can get it right from the driver's mouth. Because at Women in Trucking, we represent both drivers and trucking companies, and we represent manufacturers and truck driving schools and all different groups. So there's really nothing that I could go to the government about. We don't talk about ELDs or hours of service. A couple things we have done, though, is we have initiated a study with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration on crimes against female and minority drivers. So I wouldn't call that regulatory. I would call it reform. And also Senators Moran in Kansas and our Senator Baldwin in Wisconsin have initiated a bill to create a Women in Trucking Advisory Committee at the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So I guess that's about the extent, but again, I'm going to call it, we educate. I'm not necessarily advocating.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love it. And we're going to touch a little bit on some of those issues this week, right, Janet?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. And I'm just curious, one of the hot topics, I don't know if I'm taking us to a different direction, but one of the hot topics that have been over the past couple of years in our industry is driver shortages. So I'm wondering, is this a way that we can fill that gap with reaching out to maybe an organization like yours? Or have you mentioned that some organizations or some countries bring you in to speak on it? I would think this could be a good topic for our industry for maybe, can companies come to you to recruit drivers?
We do have a career center, but here's what we offer. And I love that question, Janet. So 13 years ago, women made up about 3% of the driver population. And now we're at 10% based on a FreightWaves survey that we did late last year. And so what we do is we provide resources. We have a recruiting and retention guide. We tell you, what do women look for in a company? What do they look for in the industry? Where do they look at ads? What should be in the ads? We also have like an anti-harassment employment guide that is free to our corporate members, where if you have a training situation, the anti-harassment employment guide will talk about what is harassment, what to do about it, where to go. We have a best practices research that we provide. We also have a conference, and it would have been in September, actually right about now, but it will be virtual in November, like everyone else is going virtual. So, and we do have Secretary Chow speaking at our conference.
Elaine Chow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's top notch right there.
Yeah. So, but the challenges are that the trucking industry has always been male dominated, and so people keep doing things the same way, thinking they're going to work. And what we do is we come in, we become a disruptor, and we'll ask the drivers, so what do you need? And sometimes it's as simple as, hey, you know what? How about if you have a uniform shirt that fits women? And I can't tell you how many trucking company owners or managers have looked at me going, we didn't think about it. We just kept ordering the same uniforms. And we work with the truck cab manufacturers on truck cab design and ergonomics, because trucks used to be built for the 85th percentile male. And now, I mean, women are typically shorter arms and legs, wider hips. So now they're looking at how women can feel as comfortable seeing over the dash, being able to reach the pedals, and things like that. And we also work with the truck stops themselves on safety and security and amenities. I mean, 10 years ago, you'd go into a truck stop and any antiperspirant that you bought in the convenience store was male scented, right? So, and the clothing wouldn't fit women. So what we do is we make people think about things and change their practices to adapt so that women feel as comfortable, make it a level playing field.
That is really eye-opening, and it makes so much sense when you say it.
Right.
But I'm like that guy at the trucking company that you were talking about who just never thought of it. I remember the first time when I was ordering uniforms for my moving company. I started a company at the last company I was at, and I stood up a moving company, and all of a sudden I had to buy uniforms for everybody, and I bought like XL, 2X shirts, and they're all like, hey man, where's my mediums? I'm like, they're fit, I'm a big guy, and they're out there and they're tiny because they're moving furniture all day, and I didn't even think of that, right? I thought they were big guys, and they're not big guys. And so I think that's so telling, though. We come at it from our own biases, and I think it's important for someone like you, frankly, Ellen, to kind of say, hey, that doesn't make sense, and I think if I was a female truck driver, I would want to go work for a place that had a female truck driver uniform and had a cab that was ergonomically designed to fit me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gosh, I'm a big guy. I need some ergonomics myself, so I totally get that. It resonates with me, for sure. That's great. Janet, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm curious about your conferences. I know I read and heard an interview you did on Freight Waves that I think you had 1,150 people registered last
We did. It was our 5th conference, and we had 1,100 registered attendees last year.
It's amazing. And so, like, who comes? Is it a lot of female drivers? Who are your supporters? Who is putting up booths for the conference center? I'm curious about that. So 85% of the attendees at the Women in Trucking Conference are women. So 15% men. But the typical person, some truck drivers come, but it's hard for a truck driver to get away for 3 days. But we do have a track for truck drivers. We have a track for HR. We have a track for CEOs. We have a track for safety professionals. But the speakers, if you go into the side tracks, those are geared towards different occupations. But our main speakers are everything about like branding yourself or communication styles or how to negotiate. Women aren't as comfortable negotiating as men. Succeeding in a male-dominated work environment. Those are the kinds of speakers that we have, which is for anyone. I mean, men and women enjoy it. So since it was only our 5th year and we were up to 1,100 people, I've been truly amazed at the growth of our conference. Yeah, that's amazing.
What do you attribute that growth to, Ellen? I mean, obviously something's really touching a spot with people, that's creating that kind of community. What do you attribute that success to?
Because our conference is positive. Our conference is forward thinking. Typically these days, when you go to any transportation related conference, what are they talking about? Oh,
Doom
the regulations.
The
regulations,
Uber,
COVID,
Amazon, we're all going out of business.
Hours of service, ELDs. It's sad. Ours is not. There's an energy at ours that is just amazing. Where people are like, "This is so exciting," and we have young female graduates from colleges who come in, supply chain, and they're learning from their peers. Last year, we were in Dallas, and we actually had 100 people from the PACCAR family, from Kenworth, Dynocraft, Peterbilt. I mean, because we were in their area, and they even held a mini conference at our conference. So I think because everything is so positive and forward thinking, because we're talking about opportunities for women in this industry. So it's just a really, if you came, you'd feel the energy.
Well, it's interesting because when you're at 10%, when women are at 10% of the drivers, to me, that sounds like there's a ton of headroom for growth, you know?
And also, women are only 24% of management. And we do a Women in Trucking Index every year, and there's 15 publicly traded trucking companies. So if there's anyone on this who works for a publicly traded trucking company, half of them have no women in leadership. And about a third have no women on their boards.
I want to give a shout out real quick to a couple of people that are watching that you made me think of. Eddie Mark says, my entire family are truck drivers. He got his CDLA at 21, and Eddie actually his and I want to get this wrong, Eddie, so I apologize, but I want to say your grandmother, I believe, owns the company or owned the company. So it was a woman owned moving and trucking company. So which is really cool. I actually work for a woman owned moving and trucking company as well, and we're gonna have my chairman Elise on Wednesday, which is really cool. So hopefully I don't blow it, No, but this is cool. We got Rory Ramirez saying, I was responding to the audience poll, I used to be an over-the-road driver for United Van Lines. Rory, you got to tune in Friday. I know you tune in every day, buddy, but you got to tune in Friday because we actually have a United Van Lines driver from Corrigan on, right, Janet? What's her name?
Yep. Cindy Caps.
Cindy Caps. All right. Doing thermal
She's one of our she's our image team member.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. And we're hoping to get a couple of ladies to join that she reached out to. So I know it's tough. It's been a tough, because like you said, they're on the road during the day but we appreciate your help because I'm excited about having a female driver on for sure.
The drivers are always the best shows too, because they have such great stories and people just are so empathetic to them as well. Elena Anderson DeLay says, I have twin trucker cousins, Justin and Jarvis King. I've been trying to get them into mobility for years. They're former Marines too. Hey, awesome. Elena, if you got some drivers in your family, okay, and they need a gig, all right, I could put them in this real sweet North American truck, right? you just let me know, Elena, okay?
You might need to attend the conference, Ben, and maybe you could find recruit some female drivers there. I'm sure I stand behind that.
I think our clientele, Janet, just to have a household goods moment right now, I think our clientele and all of the women that work in mobility, whether it be at the HR level or at the RMC level, would absolutely love, and all the transferees that we're dealing with are women, I think they would love to see more women.
And, I always said that, and although today it's probably not politically correct, but I'm in the industry a long time, and I used to say that's what makes me successful is, a lot of times, let's face it, a lot of times it was the males that were being transferred for job assignment, and I'd have to deal with the wife or this, trailing spouse or partner, and I always felt like they had a feeling like I would understand how special the heirloom china was more than, and then it grew into, we started to see more female packers. I think I'm an excellent packer myself. And, so now seeing more drivers in our industry, I think you're right. It would be amazing to most transferees. And just as a side note, I keep telling Martin, my husband, he should get a CDL license. We love RV living, like, take the show on the road. We get to see the country. The trucks today are amazing inside for sleeping, and
you could. I could totally see y'all on the road. I could totally see y'all doing a team driver situation there.
I have to mention, Ben, if you don't mind, I did get my CDL as well back in 2008 because I run the association, and even though I had worked, run a small fleet, I hadn't earned my CDL, so I do have a commercial CDLA.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Drivers won't totally respect you until you get your CDL. I've learned that from being in the movie business too. But you mentioned something before about the image team, right? And doing ride-alongs and everything. One of my, Jen, I don't know if I've told you this, but one of my dream things to do here with like Love and Relo and this platform, because I think the story of the driver is not told very well, at least within the household goods space, people just don't understand the sheer amount of effort and commitment and everything that goes into the day of life of a household goods driver. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to do a ride along for like a day or two where you could really immerse yourself in it, and I would love to document it and do like a documentary about it. And I think that would be a lot of fun. I think it would open a lot of eyes too.
Yeah.
We got one last comment over here from Jeff Nadeau. Happy 39th, Janet.
He's a buddy. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, do you guys have any female drivers?
Yeah, Jeff, does DeWitt have any ladies on the road there? Let us know here. Let's see. Rory says, when I used to be a helper, the women drivers were a lot nicer to work for. Some of these men are crap asses.
That brings me to something that I was thinking. I'm sure I could imagine some of the fears of a female going into the trucking industry, but is there any that maybe our mind wouldn't immediately go to of some of the fears that you've, encountered in your conversations?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I think Hewlett-Packard did research and said that men will apply for a job when they have 60% of the qualifications, and women won't apply for a job until they have 100% of the qualifications. So think about that as drivers. So when I worked at Schneider, we had our own academy. We could basically take anyone off the street as long as they had a good driving record and turn them into a professional driver. And when I talked to women, I'd say, have you ever thought about being a driver? And they'd say, oh, well, I'm not big and burly, or I'm not mechanically minded. And I want to know if anyone in this audience has their drivers fixing their trucks, because they don't. So the misconception. But also women would say, well, I can't learn how to shift. And I'd say, well, you can. And by the way, a lot of trucks now have automated transmissions. Or they'd say, I can't learn how to back. Well, a guy would say, well, I don't know how to drive a 13-speed, but you're going to teach me, right? And so women think they need perfection. And so they think they need to understand the job. They think they need to know how to do all parts of it before they come into the industry. That's what we're trying to do at Women in Trucking. We're trying to say, you know what, you come in, we're going to teach you, and we're going to give you skills that help you deal with this. But Janet, I'm going to switch a little bit about your question. So the number one issue for women and why women leave this industry is safety. So and safety is three parts: their personal safety, how safe, where are they going? Where are they, I know in moving, what part of town are you sending them to? And is it dark? Is it lit well? Is it, is there violence in that area? Are you sending them into an area of protests or defunded police? So their personal safety. Also, how well is the equipment maintained? Because nobody wants to break down on the side of the road. Yeah. And so it's where you're sending them. And then the third one is, do you really walk the walk on conditions? So if it's snowing or hurricanes or whatever, and a driver says, wow, I don't want to run into that area. And if you say, well, I need this load delivered, what message are you sending the driver? So women will leave if they don't feel that the company cares about their safety.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I've seen that, right? As when I even worked as a freight broker as well, right? Where the shipper is like, well, gosh, it happens in household goods all the time. Well, I need my stuff delivered, to today or, whatever, the 15th. And you're like, well, ma'am, sir, there was a hurricane, there's, act of God, force majeure, like whatever. They're like, I don't care, and it's like, what do you do with that? Right. And so then you end up telling the driver they got to deliver. And then of course they're like, well, here's what you could do with your load. And, what do you do? Right. So I don't know. It's a great point though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're under a lot of pressure all the time for the delivery dates. So yeah, and we put pressure on our drivers. So that's eye-opening for me. So thanks for mentioning that.
We've got some great comments here. I just want to honor these real quick before we get back into the talk here. Jeff Nadeau, DeWitt has 0 trucks. We are a forwarder. We do have a lady driver in our Alaska division who runs the Alcan Highway, but none at Royal Hawaiian that I'm aware of. All right. Rory says, I've had women drivers tell me they were not taken seriously. It would take them a couple of years or 5 before their coworkers would give them respect. Do you hear that a lot, Ellen? That women have trouble getting respect? Well,
women have to prove themselves because they are in a male-dominated environment. So they have to prove that they can do it. So women will tell me all the time that 5 guys will stand around watching them back up to a loading dock. You know, would they do that to men? No, they'd say, hey, let me back you in. Let me help you. You know, but they want to make sure that the women know what they're doing. But on the flip side, and I'm glad Rory said that, because on the flip side, once a female driver proves herself, she does get the respect of her peers.
Good. This is a cool little comment here. Mark Lundgren. Hey, Mark, it's good to see you here. Hey, hi, Ben, Ellen. Still have our Claire doll from, she's not getting sick. Okay. No, hey, show us what you got there. Hold it up.
This is Claire.
Oh,
this is our truck driver doll.
Oh, that's great. Hold it up high for us because I want to see it over the comment as I read this. If you
I
don't
put
mind.
my headset back on.
Yeah. Okay.
So
hold it up high for us. There you go.
And her hat fell off on the floor. But this is Claire, our truck driver doll, and we sell them at Women in Trucking. Let me put it in the camera there. Little blue jeans and shoes, and there's a Where's Claire Facebook page. So truck drivers take Claire all over with them, and like a flat Stanley, and then they take pictures of her all over. And we've got drivers in New Zealand even who have Claire with them. And so Claire has been on vacation with drivers. She's delivered at tons of different places. Her hat fell off. But at our conference a couple of years ago, we had a Where's Claire party, and everybody dressed up as Claire. It was hilarious.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I love it.
Mark, you got to tell us where you got Claire. She's traveled afar with some of our drivers over the road. We have found some women drivers have the utmost professionalism and closer attention to detail, managing the move and customer. Mark runs interstate van lines out of DC. So, hey, Mark, thanks for that. That was a great comment.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Rory's over here soliciting jobs in Hawaii. Rory, you never quit, and I appreciate and respect you for that. Lynn Greenberg, hi, all checking in from New York. Pivot app. What's up, Lynn? Good to see you. Always looking for good people in Hawaii, Jeff says. You guys get a room. All right. Anyway.
I have a comment, Ben. So we have a recruiting and retention guide, and here's a tip for everybody listening. And this is a free tip that they're going to love. On our Facebook page, when we ask the question, how many female drivers have a motorcycle license or a motorcycle? 80%. So think about the kind of female who's comfortable around a semi-truck. She's also comfortable around a motorcycle. So here's a recruiting tip. Take one of your happy female drivers, put your company shirt on, hopefully a women's size shirt, put her in a charity run, and let her talk about how wonderful your company is.
Nice. There you go. And yeah, and I know Mark, and sounds like not Jeff, but I know our company, I mean, we're all recruiting drivers all the time, as you probably are aware, Ellen. So we appreciate the tips as well. Janet?
I'm trying to look over some of my notes here. I mean, this is a kind of a crazy question, but are CBs still really big in the trucking industry?
No.
Especially cell phone.
No, especially for female drivers. A lot of drivers will use them only if there's congestion, but now you have Waze, you have different apps, and you have, but CBs, a lot of times when a woman gets on a CB, she gets a lot of unwanted attention.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
What can we do? So we got a bunch of people watching this right now. We've got a phenomenal community. They're just so great. And they care and they want to get involved, and we take action. How can we support the Women in Trucking Association? How can we support women in trucking? What can we do, Ellen?
Well, first of all, join. We're a nonprofit. So I would say join, and it's www.womenintrucking.org. But join, we have corporate and individual members. But once you join, you get access to all of our resources. We have a weekly newsletter. We have a magazine. You can buy Claire whether you join or not. But we have another thing I need to mention is we created a Girl Scout transportation patch. We found out the Boy Scouts had one in supply chain and Girl Scouts didn't. So let's see if I can get my patch on the. We worked with the Greater Chicago and Northern Indiana Girl Scout region and wrote the curriculum. And so over 1,100 girls now have earned this patch. So I would, I would say.
See it. I know. It's like, oh, it's got a truck on it. I love it. I love it.
And so we will help you do a Girl Scout event. If you're a carrier, a dealer, a truck dealer, a school, whatever, a lot of them have done Girl Scout events because it brings media attention. And I know these days, right now, probably there aren't Girl Scout events, but I would say join the organization, be a member. We also have a scholarship foundation. We've given out over $100,000 in scholarships, and the scholarships are for safety, anyone involved in safety, driving, technician, we all need technicians. And the fourth area for scholarships are what we call leadership. So if somebody is working for in supply chain and wants to advance their career, they should apply for a scholarship from us, and we'll give them $1,000 if they qualify, because we want to help them advance their career.
What are some of those fundraisers, maybe if people are watching and they say, okay, I'll join Women in Trucking, it sounds like, Mark Lundgren, might do that if he's not already a member. What are some of those? Do you have fundraisers that we can support as well? Because we're very big on fundraising here on Love and Reload.
Well, the foundation does. The foundation is a charitable organization, a 501c3. So yes, the foundation would love to get your money because it all goes to scholarships. As far as the association, we're a 501c6 trade organization. So I would say get active by first becoming a member. Secondly, come to our conference. Come to the conference in November. It will be a 2-day event. Secretary Chow will be kicking it off. We'll have breakout sessions. You'll learn a lot, I promise. And just become involved. So once you become a member, all of our resources are free to our corporate members. So
nice.
Check it out.
So I got a question, because we're in the virtual business, here on the show as far as connecting people and creating engagement and stuff. How are you doing a virtual conference? What has been the hardest part of this, and what do you think has been the biggest revelation or for you?
The hardest part is keeping people engaged. And so we're going to have it very interactive. We'll have breakout sessions. We're having brown bag lunches. We're going to gamify it. We have a new driver ambassador program, and we got a truck from Schneider, and Walmart donated a trailer, and we have a simulator in it. And so they want to name the truck. So we're going to do that at our conference as well. We'll be unveiling our Influential Woman in Trucking winner. We have 6 finalists, and they always do a roundtable discussion on what does it take to be an influential woman in trucking. So it'll be very, very dynamic. You're not going to just sit there and watch and play games on your phone, because you're going to be involved. And so I've been attending a lot of different conferences to see what I like about them, and what keeps me engaged. And so I think we're going to hit it out of the ballpark.
Nice. It sounds like you got a great plan. I love the idea of gamifying it, because you're right. It requires interaction, which is what I'm going to do right now, in that I'm going to shout out Janaina. Janaina says, I'm really loving this talk all the way from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. I'm learning so much from a reality that I didn't know much about. Awesome to see such a great professional sharing impressive experience and showing that trucking is one of the places for women. She says, we can be what we can see. Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting, right?
I'm glad she said that, because one of the things that we do is we share stories. We have a member of the month, and we share stories. If women don't see other women in these jobs, and that when I said part of our mission was celebrating success, we have an influential woman in trucking, a distinguished woman in logistics. We have a professional driver of the year, our members of the month. We share stories. And so I love it. You can't be what you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, I think that's a big part of what your organization's doing, right? Is raising the profile. You know, you have the image team. I mean, I think all that stuff is fantastic.
Does the image team in their cities that they live go into the schools? I'm just curious.
The driver ambassador will be going to truck driving schools and high schools. There's going to be like questionnaires in there, like what skills do you need and how, can you be a truck driver? But the image team is not only do they do media interviews and ride-alongs, but we get them out in the non-trucking public. Like we just had one of our drivers in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today. We just had an article. We had a driver do a 2020 segment with Diane Sawyer. We gave her a ride along. We had a driver on the Megyn Kelly show, Ricky Lake's show. We've had a driver in Oprah magazine. We try to get our drivers out there. Oh, and Dr.
Now LOVE+RELO is in that.
We're up there with Oprah, with Diane Sawyer. I mean, I knew it was bound to happen, honestly.
Yeah, and so our whole goal is to get our story out there. The driver who was on the Megyn Kelly show, she talked about how she runs team with her husband and that she runs at night. And she talked about sunsets, sunrises. Our phones just lit up. And our email, and all these women were saying, I never thought about it. So we have to share their stories. And when we do media ride-alongs, and they, you know, like USA Today was only a few months ago, and they're awesome stories because they talk about how much our image team members love their jobs.
That's great. That's great. I love it. I love it. When people tell stories, I mean, it just changes everything. Jamie's got a story for us. I have to say, I had a woman deliver 2 pallets of field stone to my driveway by herself and drop them in the exact spot requested. 4,000 pounds of stone. I was amazed. Women are just as capable. I might even say more capable, Jamie, because you didn't do it. They did it. I love you, Jamie. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, that's fantastic. These are fantastic stories. I just wanted to give you the opportunity, Ellen, to maybe kind of give us kind of a final thought, you know, and what would you like to leave the audience with today?
So don't assume that women don't want the job. That to me is when people say, well, women aren't going to want to do flatbeds, or women don't want to haul cars, or women don't want to do relocation. Women do want to do it. And the one thing that brings women into the industry is money, because they make the same amount of money as their male counterparts doing the same job. So, you know, focus on the fact that the money is there and the fact that you are going to assume that they are just as capable.
Love it. I love it. That's great. Janet, I got to tell you, big shout out to you, Janet. You did a fantastic job booking Ellen here. She's fantastic.
You know, I meant to say this, that Ellen and I met at a conference called Work, and not Worldwide ERC, because Ellen, we have an organization that we belong to. That's the Worldwide Employee Relocation Council. So I always got a little mixed up when I saw Work and Work.
So it was
Work was
warehousing. Yeah, warehousing, education, resource. It's WERC.
Mm-hmm. Yep, something council.
Great.
Warehouse. And so Ben, can I wrap it up with one final quick comment?
Please.
So remember when I told you in high school that I wanted to be broadcast journalism?
Yeah.
And now I get to do all these webinars. I get to stand up in front of people and do speaking. And now I have my own radio show on Sirius XM, and it's called Women in Trucking. So Saturday mornings, channel 146, which is the trucking channel on Sirius XM, from 10 Central until noon. It's the Women in Trucking show. So maybe we should have one just about relocation.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, we could definitely help you with that, because there's lots to talk about. No, that's fantastic. You have your own show. That is so cool. And you finally, you know, it's funny how dreams come true, right? Like, it's not the way you think it is in your brain, but if you follow your passion and you always look for the opportunities, they present themselves. And Ellen, I love hearing your story. It's fantastic. You just followed your passion and your interest, and always kept an eye out for what you believed in, and look at it. It's coming true, and it's impacting so many people's lives. So thank you. It's been an honor to have you here today, Ellen, and check out Ellen 10 10 a.m. Central on channel 146 on Sirius, which is 11 a.m. Eastern, which is my time zone. So next time I'm in the car at 11 a.m., I'm going to tune you in. And I don't know if you take callers or not.
Oh, yeah, I do.
yeah, I might have to give you a call. Yeah.
We actually we talked about moving on one show, a guy who wrote a book about moving. His name's Finn. I don't know if you've read the book.
Yeah, the final mile or something like that.
I had him on my show, and you know what I learned from him? We have too much stuff.
Yes.
Well, don't tell anybody, Ellen. We're still moving it over here. No, yeah, Finn's great. That book is a fantastic book too. Yeah. Ellen,
thank you, Ellen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all your help too this week.
Well, thank you, and please consider joining womenintrucking.org. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Ellen. Janet, before we go, I think it's best that we do a little recap of maybe the week.
Okay.
And maybe tell people what they can expect this week, because you did a really nice job. I mean, Ellen was wonderful.
Yeah, hang in there, Ellen. We'll be right with you backstage. So tomorrow we have Lena Rechtel coming from Sweden to talk about a lot of the corporate initiatives that are going on in Sweden to support women in the workforce. So, and on Wednesday, Ben will be interviewing his boss. I think he's the most nervous for that show than he's ever been in his entire year of broadcasting. And Thursday, another thing that I'm very passionate about, an organization, is Truckers Against Trafficking. So we will hear amazing stories of how truckers are actually playing a major part of rescuing these women that are being trafficked against their wills. And on Friday, we're hoping to have, a couple of drivers, owner, operator, and van line. Specifically, we're trying to keep them in the van line family. But if that doesn't work out, we'll welcome really any female truck driver. But so far, we have two.
So Janet, you did a great job, honestly. And if they're all as good as Ellen, we got a wonderful lineup this week. So impressed. I'm so happy and honored that we're doing this.
Thank you for letting me go with it.
Thank you, Janet. You're the best. I appreciate you. Hey, everybody, tune in all week. It's great. And oh, by the way, just a real quick, for the Move for Hunger fundraiser, I think we need $1,000 left. So we're $29,000 raised this month for Move for Hunger Action Month. We got 3 days left, the 28, 29, 30. We got 2 days left. So we need to hit our $1,000. So go to moveforhunger.org/relo. Donate. A $35 donation gets a t-shirt. A $100 donation gets a hoodie. All the money goes to Move for Hunger 100%. $100 buys 250 meals. So please go check it out, and appreciate y'all. Love y'all so much. Thank you again, Jen. Did fantastic.